crossing to connect with communities both north and south of the Queensway. There will be convenient pedestrian and cycling linkages from the community to all stations, and a multi-use pathway would run parallel with the full length of the LRT corridor. There will be 4 park and rides as part of the LRT project, with a total of 2,610 spaces available along this corridor, consisting of 2 existing and 2 new park and rides located at Palladium and Hazeldean Station. Although the Stage 2 office received environmental assessment approval for a light maintenance and storage facility site just west of Moody Station, they reviewed 8 additional sites further west to explore if there was a more suitable location. Many of these additional sites had active development applications or commitments or had other constraints on them. As a result, the Moody Light Maintenance and Storage Facility is still the preferred site when the Kanata LRT is built. With the light maintenance and storage facility nearby, the city has been and will continue to consult with the NCC and Wesley Clover Park. The benefits of this LRT plan include a fully segregated facility that will not be impacted by traffic congestion. It would provide fast, frequent, and reliable service. The central corridor along the Queensway acts as a spine for Kanata that can connect to future bus rapid transit and transit priority corridors running north and south from the LRT, shown in blue. These corridors would feed the LRT spine and support transit trips within Kanata and between Kanata and the rest of the city. There are no significant environmental impacts identified, as the majority of the LRT is bundled with the Queensway corridor and other planned future transportation corridors. This corridor also supports the city's planned development objectives of higher density development and intensification along the central core area, as shown in dark purple. Lastly, portions of this corridor have been protected through previous EA studies. Public consultation included meetings with agencies, businesses, community and interest groups, Indigenous peoples, and individual stakeholders. More than 200 people attended the 2 open houses, and the public were generally supportive of the plan. However, the Kanata North Business Park and Department of National Defense expressed concern with the recommended corridor, as they prefer an LRT route that directly serves their site. The study team reviewed 13 corridor options that covered a very broad area of Kanata. The corridor options focused on existing road and rail corridors to avoid introducing new environmental impacts. The map on the top shows the 6 corridors, with the Queensway located here, sort of along the bottom, and the furthest northern corridor extending to Terry Fox Drive. Along corridors 3 and 4, as shown here, is the existing Renfrew rail corridor. The map on the bottom shows the 7 corridor options, with the Queensway located here, sort of along the top, showing several options, with corridor 13 extending as far south as the Carlton Place corridor, also known as the Trans-Canada Trail. When these 13 corridors were assessed against ridership, transportation network connectivity, the natural and social environment, and cost, the recommended corridor north of the Queensway ranked highest, and this information was presented to both the business park and D&D. To further concerns, additional corridor options that directly serve the D&D sites and the business park were reviewed. This map shows the location of D&D's Carling Campus, Shirley's Bay, the Connaught Range, and the Kanata North Business Park. Because these sites are away from the planned LRT alignment along the Queensway, the business park and D&D requested a review of this alternate LRT corridor, shown in red. This corridor begins at Moody Station, heads north to the D&D employment areas, then turns west along Carling Avenue until it reaches March Road, where it continues further north along March and into the business park, ending at the Innovation Park and Ride. Although we conducted the review using D&D's growth projections, which are higher than the city's official plan growth projections for the area, the bus rapid transit corridor along the Queensway, shown in blue, is still needed to serve Central, West, and South Canada. Under this option, just over 50% of morning peak period trips would continue to travel by bus along the Queensway, because this is the central spine that equally supports buses from other areas of Canada. As shown in red, less than half of trips would travel on the LRT west of Moody Station. This analysis concludes that the permanent flow of travel continues to be along the central spine of the Queensway, which is the preferred LRT corridor. We also met with the federal member of parliament, Ms. Karen McCrimmon, who also raised concerns about an LRT route that does not directly serve the business park and D&D. She referred to further review of an LRT route, and the study team developed a corridor along Carling Avenue, as shown in yellow. This route forms a loop going north along Moody Drive, then west on Carling Avenue to serve the D&D employment areas. At Hertzburg, the route provides access at the south end of the business park before heading south to March Eagleson, then continuing west along the Queen. Ms. McCrimmon's route was then compared against the recommended corridor. Although her route includes 4 additional stations, it added 4 kilometers of travel distance, increasing the travel time by 1.5 minutes, resulting in a less attractive LRT route with 12% fewer riders. The total cost is estimated to be about 30%, and while this option eliminates the need to transfer at Moody Station for the D&D employees, the LRT would run less frequently than buses that connect campus to Moody Station. Lastly, riders traveling to D&D would still have to walk as far as 1 kilometer from the LRT station to the furthest building, while bus service could travel into the site as security arrangements allow. Ms. McCrimmon also asked us to consider future routes and technology options that could serve D&D and the business park. Here are 2 other corridor options that can be looked at in the future. Both options include the protected corridor along March Road. The option on the left includes a route from March Station and a second route from Moody Station, with both routes providing access to the business park and D&D as they converge at March and Carling and continue north along March Road. The option on the right provides 2 independent routes to access either the business park or D&D, but not both on one route. A separate environmental assessment study would be required to identify and protect this corridor. This slide presents a sampling of various current and future technology options that we know of today that could be considered. Again, a separate environmental assessment study would be required to identify the technology and design of the corridor. The total cost for the Canada LRT in 2017 dollars, including light rail vehicles and contingencies, is currently estimated at $1.85 billion. The project could be implemented in stages depending on funding levels, as shown. This project is currently not in the city's affordable plan. The first stage includes bringing the LRT from Moody Station to Terry Fox Station, as well as the full expansion of the light maintenance and storage facility for $710 million. The second stage would extend from Terry Fox to Palladium Station for $640 million. The final stage would extend LRT to the terminus at Hazeldean for $500 million. Following committee and council approval, the study team will finalize the draft environmental project report this month and initiate the transit project assessment process. This is the administrative review of documentation and includes the final 30-day public review period. This concludes the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So as I indicated, we have a number of delegations from the public. So first up is Randy Kemp from Bike Ottawa, and Randy, you'll be followed by Trevor Hache from the Healthy Transportation Coalition. Morning, Mr. Kemp. 5 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I need to figure out where's the...
Just go up and down.
There they are.
We'll hold the 5 minutes till you figure it out, don't worry.
Okay, I couldn't find the arrows. All right. Down. There we go. By way of introduction, I was involved with the consultation process for Phase 1 as a representative of the Wellington West BI for the area around Tunney's pasture. I was also part of Phase 2 as a resident of Westboro. Did some great things in Phase 2 with the build out of Richmond Road, the complete street. And here I am, Phase 3, representing Bike Ottawa in the Canada BRT, or the light rail project. The reason why I'm here is because I think we all have to recognize that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have an impact on our communities with a multi-billion project. And what that means to me, at least personally, is my children, my older kids in Canada, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren are all going to benefit from what we do over the next number of months and years in designing this project. I'm going to focus my comments just to the first 3 stations, primarily because I think that Phase 1, Stage 1, is probably going to get built out sooner than later. Everything west of Terry Fox is for the most part undeveloped, and that can be addressed through the development process. What you'll notice is that the urban area of Canada is actually bisected by the Queensway and the new LRT corridor. That creates some real problems for cyclists in that they have to get across those 2 barriers. The currently, and I know the project addresses a pedestrian cycling barrier Fox as well as March Eagleson, but the problem right now is that it's very difficult to get across the Queensway. And to demonstrate that, you can see that this is Terry Fox right at the Queensway looking north. Very hostile for cyclists. There are bike lanes there, but God help you to get through there. This is Canada Avenue, again, bike lanes, but not very friendly. And then the Eagleson is absolutely a death trap. So I want to support staff's position that they will install new bridges at Terry Fox and Eagleson. I think they're absolutely necessary. But the really good news is that we have existing infrastructure in Canada, bridge, and that's the green X that you see up there. And whomever was responsible for building this, they should be celebrated, because this is actually the key to the cycling network for the Canada community. And to see why, the LRT has a 3-meter MUP built adjacent to it in the same corridor. When you line up the ultimate or the cycling plan ultimate network that the city has, the green lines there represent off-street multi-use pathways that connect to the existing pathways in the residential communities of Canada. This is a huge opportunity for the network. This shot shows you the proposed MUP, the LRT MUP, and the crossing at the Queensway, and you can see how it connects into the network. It's the blue lines actually that are existing pathways through the community. There's a problem, and the problem is the connection of those 2 green lines between Canada Town Centre and March Eagleson. I have asked twice how we are going to connect these 2 stations, once to the consultant at the open house, and once again to city staff after the report was released, and both times they have made reference to redirecting the multi-use pathway up to Compo Drive and around. That's a problem, and it's a problem for a number of reasons. Number one, Compo is a major arterial road. The distance between Canada Town Centre and March Eagleson is by about 500 meters. It's uphill in both directions, believe it or not. And finally, it is no longer an off-road facility as soon as you start crossing Compo. The blue line represents the BRT up March Road. The far green line connects you to downtown. So when we start talking about connecting to Canada Business Park and DND, this linkage becomes critical. And finally, the problem that we have here is the March Eagleson Compo intersection. We have a creek, we have 22 lanes of traffic coming into the intersection, and we have the LRT construction. What I would like to encourage us to do today is to recognize that we need to create an efficient, convenient, and safe network as part of this LRT. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp. Are there any questions to delegation? Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. I think it would be a good idea for you to connect with our TAC committee in Canada North, the Action Committee of Canada North, that have marked every single road in the area, whether it's safe to go on or not for cyclists, and they're just producing a map on that to be out in a few weeks. But one of the things that are coming out of that is there's going to be a multi-use pathway along to serve March Road, not right on March Road because it's almost impossible to do that, but it's going to go parallel to it or just inside the community just from Terron through to Campo, which is a part of that. So there is some action happening, and that's a group that is very interested in doing these. You probably know the best way to park right now is actually along Carling. It's much shorter. And you do have the paved shoulders except where that silly railroad overpass is. And I see a lot of cyclists using that. So it is a prominent one. And of course, is going through the green belt and there's under March Road, but that's not very good for going to work. But I think if you could, I'll give you the contact information, and I think it would work because I've had them take a look at all of this. They like the idea of the multi-use pathway, but they've been struggling just as you are to how we get the others doing it. There is actually almost a multi-use pathway on Campo now from Terron to Knudsen was put in last year. So there are some things starting to happen.
Yes, I'm familiar with some of those, not the March one, and absolutely, I think to really engage the Canada community and get them to understand how big of an opportunity this really is to have a transformative impact on
they know that,
active transportation.
So if you email me, I'll send you the contacts.
Will do.
Councillor, any other questions for the delegation? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Trevor Hache is next, and Trevor will be followed by David Gourlay. Hello again. You know the rules?
Yes, let me just start a timer. So I'm a resident of Canada South, Vice President of the Healthy Transportation Coalition. I'm very supportive of the recommended route, and I strongly urge the committee and City Council to try as much as it's possible to find money sooner rather than later. I don't think we should or can or need to wait until 2031. Residents of Canada need light rail now. And it's great that we have all provincial political parties now on record saying they will fund phase 2 of LRT. I urge people to pivot quickly and start asking for a phase 3 commitment. I'd also like to voice support for the multi-use pathway that will run along the corridor, but safe cycling infrastructure is needed for many kilometers in many directions, leading to that multi-use pathway to allow people to travel from the low-density residential housing developments to the MUP and to the transit stations. There are some decent off-road recreational cycling routes in Canada, but biking for commuters is dangerous, and cycling infrastructure there is in tremendous need of improvement. The staff report, I think specifically on page 4, says that some of the benefits of extending LRT line south from the hockey arena down to Hazeldean Road will include maximizing opportunities for transit-oriented developments on vacant lands, which is great. Now, it's my understanding that the city's equity and inclusion lens is supposed to be applied to all of its decision-making, and while I understand that with regard to transportation, staff are in the process of determining how it's applied, and it is in their go-forward plans for the next TMP update, the issue of co-locating affordable housing at these rapid transit stations is absolutely critical. And so I really want to encourage this conversation with regard to stage 3 to happen right away. What are the opportunities? How can we take advantage of them? So from the perspective of stage 3, there are a lot of great opportunities, which is good news. Canada LRT will include 11 kilometers of rail. We saw on the map earlier that purple area that's fairly large, that's designated to be intensified to encourage transit-oriented developments. The Canada LRT will include 8 stations and 4 park and rides. Eagleson has 1,200 parking spots, Terry Fox 540, the Canada Centre 200 spaces, and Hazeldean, which would be a new park and ride, has 650 spaces. Now, I live in Canada. I use the park and ride most often Sunday nights when I'm going to play indoor soccer downtown, and I can tell you, Sunday nights, I look around and the lot is virtually empty, and I think, what a tremendous waste of space. This parking lot for 1,200 people that's well used, very well used during the day, but could we not imagine something better for this area, for these park and ride lots? Could we not imagine a vibrant community existing in addition to these park and ride lots along this tremendous transportation corridor? And think of the ridership numbers that would increase if we could increase the amount of housing in close proximity to rapid transit stations. So it's great that LRT to Canada will bring 90% of residents within 5 kilometers of rail. This committee, when being committed to the equity and inclusion lens and all of its decision-making, must ensure that there are excellent pedestrian and cycling connections from Ottawa Community Housing and cooperative housing to those stations. Right now, Eagleson Road is a terribly dangerous place for cyclists. There aren't even painted bike lanes on Eagleson Road. Proper sidewalks exist on some of Eagleson Road leading to the future LRT station, but on Moody Drive, north of Hazeldean, on the west side of Eagleson, there's virtually nothing at all in terms of space for pedestrians. So Terry Fox is slightly better for pedestrians and cyclists, but it too is in need of improvement, and segregation for cyclists there would be far safer. I think on Eagleson and Terry Fox, a speed reduction coupled with photo radar would be helpful and totally justified. We need to make these rapid transit stations welcoming, safe places for pedestrians and cyclists, people using wheelchairs, people who are 4 years old or 74 years old. Much more attention needs to be paid to traffic calming around these stations and the roads leading to them. And so I just want to encourage the city to take advantage of these opportunities related to affordable housing and the park and ride lots. And as much as it's possible, think about expropriating land specifically for affordable housing while you're expropriating land for the light rail, if that's legally allowed. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor McKenney, I know that you were considering a direction around this particular matter. Do you want to speak to that now?
I could, absolutely.
And just put that out there. I should have said that before the first speakers came, just so we're all on the same page in terms of what we're considering here. So if you can just put the direction out, and then staff can comment when we get to staff. But in case any of the delegations want to speak to it as well, it'll be out there.
Perfect. Yes, thank you, Chair. I was hoping to give direction to staff on 2 levels, just around the co-location of affordability and affordable housing with transit. As we know, as we're building out transit, wherever that is, we're also significantly increasing land values. To the benefit of some and to the absolute detriment of others. And those others are those very folks who actually will take light rail, who need light rail, who need to move around by transit rail. So I would like to direct staff to do two things. One is to come up with a list within 600 meters of all of our existing light rail stations and future light rail stations of city-owned and other owned lands that could be used and should be used for affordable housing. So a list of those properties within the within that 600 meters. And the other direction I'd like to give to staff is to form a working committee that breaks down those silos between planning, transportation, real estate, and housing, to come up with a plan or a strategy for how we are going to ensure that as we are building light rail, investing billions of dollars, that we're not pushing up and the very people who require housing at the locations of our light rail stations. I see it happening in my ward. It's becoming unaffordable. We are not seeing newcomers, families, lower income families not able to stay within the downtown for this very reason. So I would like the direction for staff to work together to come up with a working committee and report back to us on what strategies we can use to ensure that that as we are benefiting landowners around light rail, we're also ensuring that people who need it can live there. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Kennedy. Again, I just wanted you to have that out there. I know that we have Mr. Schmitz here and also Tim Mark is also here and can speak to it. Just wanted it out there so we all know about it as we're hearing from delegations and we can let that percolate. But I think both of them will want to comment on the viability of that direction and what can be done. But Councillor Caudry, I believe you have a question for this delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Trevor, again for your second presentation this morning. Just a couple of things that I wanted to, address in your statements or in your presentation. First of all, you talk about the vacant land south of the Queensway, south of 417. That land is no longer vacant. Majority of that land is developed, especially in the just adjacent to the Canadian Tire Centre. It's a community called Fairwinds Community. And they've got roughly about 3,000 homes plus, and they're going to be going with more homes in that same area. So it's no longer vacant land or fallow land directly south of the Queensway, but beyond that towards the corridor, the Hazeldean, and further south in terms of Fernbank. That piece of the corridor in Fernbank, there's quite a bit of vacancy, and that's again being developed. The other piece was that about cycling routes. Terry Fox, yes, there are some cycling routes there, and Egan is also another one, but there's a brand new cycling route that is being developed, and it's in the process. Phase one's already complete of that process. It's called the Robert Grant Avenue. It's going to travel from Fernbank north to Drive and the Queensway, and it has in the phase one, but it will have segregated bike lanes on top of the pedestrian facility for walking. I encourage you to drive out there. I know you're not that far from there, and if you want me to drive with you, I'll drive with you and give you those interesting points with Robert Grant Avenue. And that will be the future north-south arterial in terms of rapid transit as well as bicycles and pedestrians. Your third point about sharing park and rides. I was very instrumental in setting up the Canadian Tire parking lot, park and ride. And that, again, up until now, it's been about 130 spaces, but it's going to go up to 200 and possibly, and maybe Mr. Manconi can comment on that, the agreement that is made with with the Canadian Tire as to see what our requirements would be. So addressing your point exactly to the fact that I was not interested in building another park and ride when those parking lots are sitting vacant during the day, worked out with the help of Mr. Manconi and said, let's utilize that parking lot. And that parking lot is getting well used. Now the issue is how many more transit routes we can put in there. But that's again, as mentioned comes out to an affordability route. Now, with you, in terms of the question that I may have, that I have for your comments and this particular project, is if there are any other benefits that you want to see out of this project, give me just one example, or you can take it offline with me.
Well, I'm just learning about these new opportunities now a little bit, but in various places around the world, including in Toronto and Hamilton and other jurisdictions in Ontario, there are community benefits agreements that are being signed as part of major infrastructure projects. So just recently, I think it was last week in Toronto, for example, with regard to the expansion of the Woodbine Racetrack Casino, the community was able to get a benefit agreement that council supported, that the developer of the casino had to agree to, which saw the creation of a $5 million child care facility for the people who are going to be employed at that casino. That saw a commitment to hire 50% of the people that are going to be working at that expanded casino from the local community, which has been a historically disadvantaged community. So it's about jobs for people who need them, that are in pretty dire straits. And other examples of community benefits agreements come from the City of Hamilton, where a Metrolinx light rail project is being developed.
Trevor,
City has set aside land specifically for affordable housing as part of that light rail project. Those are some examples of other community benefits that can flow from major infrastructure projects.
Thank you for that, but those are some of the topics that we can take offline.
Sure.
And not necessarily associated with this particular project. Thank you for your input, and thanks for, and the offer is still on the table to drive around with you, the community of Stittsville. Okay,
Sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Yeah, I'm quite aware of the getting more local rent income housing and various things in our community, and I've been working on some of that, but there is a meeting on the 23rd of this month about the lands around the Canada Town Centre Park area across from Centrum, some of which is owned by the city, and you should come to that meeting, bring your ideas to that. It'll be useful, I think. I can't tell you the discussions I've had because the things that committee does are confidential, but I have been looking for some places for more affordable housing. We usually do it in Canada. We've done it in the form of co-op homes, and the last one I worked on was Blue Heron, which is on March Road, and it's become very successful. So we do need more, though, and for the right kind of people and having it there. We have lots of high-density housing near where this is going, but it's very expensive, and we need some of that more, and I have had some discussions. So that's a good point to do. The other things you've raised, I think, again, the TAC committee is one on the transportation that you can talk to if you want to and get a copy of the map that'll be out very shortly. And I think it may even be online already. And the things that we're doing to try to make sure that people can get around in different ways. So I appreciate your comment. Can you think, rather than just using the Toronto examples, I think we have to come up with some Ottawa-based examples, because it's a little bit different here. They don't have an NCC. Putting it next to the park and ride in Eagleson on NCC land would be more than difficult, as you probably already know. Even getting getting along there, even to get a bike path along there, a multi-use pathway is not easy, but not impossible. But I think there are other things we can do. Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Any other questions for the delegation? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Next up is David Gorley, and he will be followed by Steve Anderson, who's the president of the Katimavik Hazelton Community Association. Morning, Mr. Gorley. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is David Gorley. I'm a proud resident of Canada North. I can get the microphone here. I'm here this morning to voice support for the environmental assessment study and recommendations. I was proud to be a public champion for Stage 2 LRT. As the then president of our Ottawa Champions baseball team, you all knew I was going to mention baseball at a certain point. Baseball fans will be hitting home runs when they access RCGT Park through Tremblay Station starting in the 2019 season as the team celebrates our 5th anniversary. With Stage 2 further connecting fans across a greater geographic landscape and enjoying more efficient mobility, Now we must consider and contemplate stage 3 to integrate some of Ottawa's fastest growing communities into the most exciting infrastructure program our city has seen. As I do speak to my neighbors in Canada North on a more frequent basis these days, it is clear that transit are a top priority to support and complement further growth and development. The opportunity and potential to bring LRT to Canada North and the broader west end of the city is an exciting development. This report and recommendations, while not perfect, does open the door for a bold vision on how our community can directly benefit from LRT. These benefits are obvious, and any approach to LRT must put residents and our communities first by ensuring proper access to stations, maximum efficiency to deliver a system that is guided by affordability. These principles, while certainly not complete, initiate a constructive dialogue for us in the community on how best to balance our tax investments into LRT and service. Canada North has become too reliant on vehicle transportation use with development and growth. There is need to adopt more and better uses of alternative transportation modes, and LRT is a positive step in that direction to help ease stress on our road network and alleviate expensive repair costs. In addition, there is a natural benefit for our environment when citizens proactively choose to leave a car at home with effective and efficient methods of transit. Finally, I think I'm on safe ground saying many of my neighbors' complaints about the Queensway in these brutal rush hours are real. It took me an hour to get downtown from Canada North, and I'm only speaking to you for 5 minutes. This costs commuters on average 10 hours a week, 40 hours a month of lost productivity, commuting that is precious time with family and in the community. So it's evident that LRT is a very holistic option for our community with vast benefits that we as residents will adopt and enjoy. However, simply designing a line into the community is not enough to justify investment by taxpayers. Station access by improving infrastructure for cycling, as we've heard, pedestrian, park and ride access will get commuters into their neighborhoods, and through a BRT with efficient routing, demand ridership and frequency. We want adoption use given the fiscal investment when this proposed route puts 80% of residents in Canada within a 5-kilometer radius of rail. The core goal, or the eye on the prize for us, is adoption and use. For the employees in the Canada North Tech Park, LRT is a win-win through a proposed spine along the north side of the Queensway. There is efficiency in travel time and the March Road feeder system through BRT. But let's not stop there. An idea to put innovative technology in place, such as autonomous vehicles, will demonstrate their value for public good. Speaking of businesses, proposed stations in Canada North will support the retail sector in Tanger Mall, along March Road, Signature Centre, and the Centrum. Business investment in retail and broader economic development priorities will be supported at a time when ambiguity surrounds the future of the CTC building in the region and the impact on our local labor market and economy with the potential departure of the Senators downtown. Our tax investments are about supporting our quality of life and enhancing urban mobility as a core goal of municipal service. Let's look at an example. The residents of Arcadia support the possibility strongly of LRT with their station